The training fields of Sithar Prime shook with the sound of battle. Warriors shouted, metal clashed. Dust rose in the hot wind. Every warrior trained to become stronger, faster, deadlier. That was the Sithari way. And in the middle of it all stood Princess Aelira, silent, still, and unwanted. She held a wooden practice spear too tightly. Her stance was weak. Her arms trembled. Around her, stronger warriors laughed. She holds it like a broom. One soldier joked. She should be serving food, not leading armies, another said. Aelira tried to block out the voices, but she heard them all. She had always heard them. From childhood, the others mocked her. She was born small, her body, not built like the others. Her soft eyes and quiet voice made her look gentle, and in a world of war, gentleness was seen as weakness. The council had called her a failure. Her parents, both proud warriors, had given up hope. They had stopped asking her to train. Her only duty now was to attend official ceremonies, and even then people whispered behind her back. But inside, Aelira felt something different. She didn't want to be useless. She didn't want to be left behind. She just didn't know how to change. That same day, a transport ship landed near the Yar Palace. A tall human male stepped out, looking around with curiosity. His hair was short and messy, and his uniform was wrinkled. He didn't look like much to the Sithari guards. "This is the famous human fighter?" a guard sneered. "He looks more like a farmer." The man smiled. "Name's Jack. Heard you needed a new trainer." They laughed but let him through. No one took him seriously. The Sithari didn't respect humans much. Humans didn't have claws or scaled skin. They didn't fight with rage like the other species. But the council had allowed one human to join the training ranks as a test, an outsider's method, just to entertain the nobles. That human was Jack. Later, during the meal hour, Aelira walked alone through the garden paths near the Talus. That's when she saw Jack again. He was sitting on a stone bench watching the sky. "You're the trainer?" she asked quietly. He looked up. "You're the princess?" She nodded. "They say you're here to teach warriors, but they won't let me join." Jack tilted his head. "Why not?" "Because I always fail," she said, trying not to sound bitter. He studied her carefully. "Let me ask you something," he said. "Do you want to get stronger for yourself, or to prove them wrong?" She thought about it. "Both," she answered. Jack stood up. "Then meet me behind the old arena tomorrow at dawn. No one will know. We'll start with the basics." She stared at him. "Why help me?" "Because I see something in your eyes," he said. "You don't want to give up. That's all I need." The next morning, Aelira arrived at the old arena while the sky was still pink. Jack was already there, stretching. "Today we start with balance," he said. "Fighting isn't just strength, it's about control." She wasn't sure what he meant, but she listened. Jack showed her how to stand properly, how to shift her weight, how to breathe deeply. For hours she practiced simple movements. No weapons, no fights, just balance and focus. It was harder than it looked. She slipped, she fell. Her muscles ached, but Jack never laughed. He just nodded and helped her back up. Day after day, they trained in secret. Jack taught her strange things. Instead of shouting, he taught her to stay calm. Instead of pushing hard, he showed her how to use her enemy's strength against them. "You're fast," Jack said one day. "Faster than any soldier I've seen. We'll turn that speed into your weapon." She smiled for the first time. Weeks passed. One morning, while walking to training, Aelira was stopped by a loud voice. Well, the princess is sneaking around again," said Commander Varric, one of the top fighters of the Empire. "Training alone? Or playing with sticks?" A few soldiers laughed. Aelira said nothing, but Jack stepped forward. "She's training with me," he said. Varric raised an eyebrow. "A human teaching our warriors? That's a joke." Jack crossed his arms. "Want to test that theory?" The arena fell silent. Varric agreed to a quick sparring match. Everyone gathered to watch. Aelira's heart raced. Jack wasn't a giant or a beast, but he moved like water, smooth and hard to grab. He dodged Varric's heavy strikes and tapped his shoulder 3 times in under a minute. The crowd gasped. "Lucky move," Varric muttered, storming off. But Elira saw something else in the eyes of the watching warriors. Curiosity. Some of them were now whispering differently. That evening, Jack looked at her and said, "They'll try to stop us, but you're ready to fight now. Are you?" Elira clenched her fists. "I won't stop. Not anymore." One night, back in her chambers, Elira stood in front of the mirror. She still had the same face, the same frame, but her eyes were stronger now. Her body was more balanced. Her heart beat with purpose. "They called me useless," she whispered to herself, "but I will show them what I can become." Far in the sky, storms gathered, real ones and political ones. The council would not allow change easily, and the old warriors would not respect her just yet. But a seed had been planted, and beside her stood the only one who believed in her. A human who trained warriors not with fists but with faith. The wind blew cold across the abandoned arena, carrying dust and fallen leaves across the stone floor. Elira stood barefoot, her feet steady on the ground, her hands raised in a careful stance. Jack stood in front of her, calm and focused. "Again," he said firmly. She rushed forward. Her feet moved quickly. She ducked low and tried to strike, but Jack sidestepped with ease, tapped her shoulder, and stepped back. It looked like he barely moved. "Too much speed, not enough control," he said. Elira breathed heavily, sweat dripping down her face. "I'm trying." "I know," Jack said. "That's why we'll keep going." The days became routine. While the palace still treated her as weak, Elira woke up before the sun every day. She trained when others slept. She lifted weights, ran across stone walls, practiced stances until her legs burned. Jack never praised her too much, but he never gave up on her either. One morning, Jack handed her 2 weighted rods. "Today we build strength." Elira took them and followed his instructions. At first, her arms shook badly. After 10 minutes, she could barely lift them. But she didn't drop them. Jack silently watched her grit her teeth and finish the session. Later that day, she collapsed on the floor, her arms like fire. Jack sat beside her. "Your body is getting stronger, but that's not what I care about." She looked at him, confused. "I care more about what's inside," he said. "Strength of the heart. Most warriors forget that." Elira nodded slowly. She was starting to understand. She wasn't becoming strong to impress anyone. She was becoming strong because she finally believed it was possible. One evening, as they trained with short blades, a young Scythari warrior named Corin walked by and saw them. "What is this?" he asked loudly. "A princess pretending to be a soldier? Or a human pretending to be a trainer?" Elira stayed quiet. Jack didn't. "She's training harder than anyone I've seen," he said. "Why don't you test her instead of talking?" Corin grinned. Gladly. They stepped into the practice ring. Elira held her blade tight. Her heart beat fast, but she remembered Jack's lessons. Balance, focus, breathe. Corin came at her fast and strong. Elira dodged the first strike, blocked the second, then slipped under his third. She tapped his chest with her blade. Light touched just enough to count. The crowd watching gasped. You tricked me," Corin said. "No," Jack replied calmly. "She outsmarted you." That small victory became a spark. By the next morning, whispers about her had changed. "Did you hear? She beat Corin in a duel. The human must be using some strange tricks. She might not be useless after all." But not everyone was pleased. Deep in the royal palace, General Rizek, one of the council's strongest voices, watched from a shadowed balcony. "She's getting attention," he said. A guard nodded. "The people are watching her now. She's training like a warrior." Rizek narrowed his eyes. "Then we must remind her of her place." That reminder came soon. At the next council meeting, Elira was called before the elders. "You've been spending time with a human," said one elder coldly. "I've been training," Elira replied, her voice calm. You forget your duties, Rizek growled. The Trial of Claws begins in 3 cycles. You will compete. She froze. The Trial of Claws was the most brutal combat tournament in their empire. Warriors from across the stars came to fight. People died in that arena. But I'm not ready, she said. That is not for you to decide, Rizek said. Let the people see what your human training is worth. Jack met her outside the chamber. They want to humiliate you. She nodded. I know, but I won't give them that. The next 3 days were the hardest of her life. Jack pushed her to her limits. You don't need to be perfect, he said. You just need to survive. You need to show them you can stand on your own. They trained day and night. No speeches, no rest, just practice. Jack showed her how to fight larger opponents, how to use timing over force, and how to find an enemy's weak spot. You're not a hammer, Elira, he told her. You're a blade, precise, sharp, quiet until it strikes. Her confidence grew. Her body became faster, more balanced, more deadly. The night before the tournament, Elira sat by the fire, silent. Jack sat next to her. You scared? Yes, she whispered. That's good, he said. Fear means you care. Use it. Don't run from it. She nodded. Thank you for everything. Jack smiled. You're the one doing the work. I just showed you the path. The next morning, the sky was a deep gold. Trumpets sounded. Crowds filled the giant arena. Warriors from across the galaxy entered the combat gates, and among them walked Elira, wearing simple armor, her blade strapped to her back. She looked small, but her steps were steady. The announcer's voice echoed, Let the Trial of Claws begin. The first match was against a beast from the mines of Vorn, a creature twice her size with arms like trees. It charged with a roar. The crowd held its breath. Elira rolled under its swing, climbed its back, and stabbed the weak joint behind its shoulder. It howled and dropped. Victory. People rose to their feet. The crowd began to cheer. The second match came. Then the third. She won each, using speed, smarts, and perfect timing. Jack watched from the high seats, proud but silent. She was no longer a princess hiding behind a name. She was a warrior standing on her own. The Trial of Claws was not only about fighting, it was about honor, survival, and rising above fear. Elira stood in the middle of the grand arena, dust on her armor, sweat on her brow, but fire in her heart. Her fourth fight had just ended. Her opponent, a heavy brute from the Red Moons, had fallen after a long battle. Elira had used her speed and calm mind to win, not raw strength. The crowd had changed. When she first entered, there were whispers and laughter. Now there was cheering. The people were watching. They were surprised. They were beginning to believe. Elira sat in the waiting chamber, her body aching. Her hands trembled from exhaustion. Her legs were sore, but her mind stayed sharp. Jack met her there with a flask of water and a cloth to wipe the blood from her lip. You've done more than they ever thought you could, he said. I haven't won yet, she whispered. No, he agreed. But you've already changed the story they told about you. She looked into his eyes. And if I lose now? Then you'll still leave as someone they'll never forget. She nodded. She had trained for this moment. She wasn't the weak girl they had once called useless. She was more. The final round of the trial arrived. Elira's opponent was General Rizek's champion, a fighter named Varnock. He was taller than her by 3 heads, covered in dark armor, his claws sharp and soaked with past victories. No one had ever beaten him in single combat. He'll break her in seconds, someone whispered from the crowd. She doesn't stand a chance. The arena grew silent as both fighters walked to the center. Elira took her place. She felt her heart beating fast, but she remembered Jack's words. Breathe. Focus. Trust yourself. The signal was given. Varnock charged. He moved like a storm, heavy and fast. Elira barely rolled away in time. His blade scraped the arena floor, throwing sparks. She countered with a quick strike to his side, but he blocked with his arm. They moved again. Strike, dodge, strike. Elira felt like dancing through danger. every move just inches from defeat. But then, she saw it, his weakness. Varnock favored his right leg. Every time he attacked, he leaned slightly to one side. She waited, observed, timed her next strike. Then, she made her move. She dodged his next blow and struck his leg just above the knee. He staggered. The crowd gasped. Varnock growled in pain and rushed her again. This time with anger. Big mistake. She stepped aside, twisted, and kicked the back of his leg. He fell. Before he could rise, she pressed the edge of her blade to his neck. Silence. Then the judge raised his hand. Victory. Elira of Sithar Prime. The arena exploded with cheers. People who once doubted her now screamed her name. Children waved, her symbol. Even some warriors bowed in respect. Later, as the sun dipped low, Elira stood before the High Council. Rizek's face was hard. You have passed the trial. Against all odds. Elira didn't smile. She stood tall. I passed it because someone believed in me when you did not. The council chamber murmured. She continued. Your strength alone did not build this empire. It was belief, training, and unity. You forgot that. Rizek tried to speak, but the others interrupted. One elder raised her voice. From this day forward, let her title change. No longer a princess in waiting, but warrior of the Flame Court. The room echoed with approval. That night, the people of Sithar celebrated. Fires were lit across the capital. Music filled the air. Elira returned to the quiet arena where her journey had begun. Jack was there, leaning against the stone wall, arms crossed. You did it, he said, his smile calm but proud. I didn't win because I'm the strongest, Elira replied. I won because I trained, because I listened, and because I didn't give up. Jack nodded. That's what being a warrior really means. She looked at him seriously. They'll come after you now. Rizek will try something. I know, he said simply. But I'm not worried. You're stronger than all of them, now, she smiled. Stay close, I may still need you. I'm not going anywhere, he said. But far away, beyond the stars, ships were moving. A rival species known as the Karen had crossed into Sithari space. They moved quickly, attacking outposts and colonies. The council had ignored the warning signs, now it was too late. One by one, outposts fell. Sithari generals panicked. The Empire wasn't ready for war, not a real one. And Rizek, once so confident, now looked for someone to blame. A week later, the council called Elira again. We need leadership, an elder said. Then let me lead, she replied. But on my terms, they hesitated. Rizek frowned. Jack stepped forward. She doesn't just want power, she wants results. Let her try her way. You've already failed with yours. The room fell quiet, and for the first time, the council nodded in agreement. Elira stood before a new group of warriors, young, old, rejected, forgotten. Some had once laughed at her. Others had been ignored like she once was. We fight together, she said. Not because we're the strongest, but because we're smart, fast, and fearless. We fight not with pride, but with purpose. Jack stood by her side, and so began her greatest test, not as a fighter in a ring, but as a leader in real war. The Warrior Queen was no longer a title in training. She was becoming the one the galaxy would remember. The stars over Sithar Prime shone brighter than usual, but their light brought no peace. The sky might have looked calm, but danger was coming fast. Elira, now named a warrior by the council, stood before her new force, a group of soldiers, who were ready to fight but not fully trained. She watched them practice in a hidden valley outside the capital. Many of them were from lower ranks or forgotten families. They weren't perfect, but they had heart. And Elira, shaped by her own painful journey, believed in them. Jack walked beside her carrying 2 data pads and a calm expression. They're learning quickly, he said. They'll have to, Elira replied. The Karen won't wait. The Karen were an alien force feared across several systems. They didn't speak much, they didn't make deals. They arrived in silence and left only ashes behind. The outer colonies of the Sithari had already fallen. The council had been too slow to act. While they argued and blamed each other, the enemy grew closer. General Rizek was growing nervous, and when people like him got nervous, they looked for someone to blame. One evening, while Elira trained her troops, palace guards arrived at Jack's quarters. "You're under arrest," said the captain. Jack blinked. "For what?" "Spying," the captain replied coldly, "and feeding false tactics to weaken our empire." Jack laughed, but he knew this was serious. It was a setup. Rizek had made his move. Elira heard the news within an hour. She rushed to the palace demanding answers, but the council had already accepted the charges. Jack was locked away in a holding cell deep below the palace grounds. "You said you trusted me," she shouted at the council. "You let a human shape our military," Rizek replied. "Now you see the result." Elira clenched her fists. "He's not the problem, you are." She left the chamber without waiting for a response. That night she stood in the dark outside Jack's prison cell. They spoke through the bars. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be," he answered. "You've got more important things to worry about. Lead them. Don't let this slow you down." Elira shook her head. "I'm not leaving you here." Jack smiled softly. "You're stronger now than I ever was. That's all that matters." She left with her jaw tight and her heart burning. The next day, reports came in. A Karen fleet had entered Sithar space. They were no longer attacking small outposts. They were heading straight for the inner systems. One more colony had fallen. Overnight, no survivors. Panic spread fast. The council called an emergency session. Rizek, shaken, offered old tactics and slow strategies. But many council members had lost faith in him. They turned to Elira. "We need your leadership," one elder said. Elira didn't answer right away. She looked across the room. Some of these people had laughed at her not long ago. Now they were afraid. Finally she spoke. "If you want me to fight, I fight my way. That means I command my force, I use my tactics, and I make my own choices." They hesitated. "I also want Jack released," she added. Rizek shouted. "You dare demand terms during a crisis?" "Yes," she said calmly. "Because if I'm to lead, I need the one man who trained me to think like a warrior." There was silence. Then, slowly, the elders nodded. Jack was released that night. Together, Elira and Jack formed a war plan. But it wasn't like the council expected. She didn't call for heavy ships or long sieges. She called for speed, surprise, small teams. Guerrilla tactics. They would not fight the Karen face to face. They would bleed them from the shadows. Her warriors, once forgotten, now wore light armor, carried silent blades, and flew fast ships. They struck at night. They cut supply lines. They rescued prisoners. They left no clear trail. And they won, battle after battle. The Charon began to slow. One evening after returning from a mission, Elira stood on a cliff overlooking the valley. Jack joined her, his coat dusty and his smile tired. "They called you useless," he said. She looked at him. "Now they call me commander." Jack chuckled. "Soon they might call you queen." Elira didn't answer, but deep down, she knew. Her path had changed forever, but victory wasn't guaranteed. Rizek, still jealous, sent spies to watch Elira. He whispered lies to the council, saying she was growing too powerful, that she planned to rule alone. Some believed him. Others did not. Then the unthinkable happened. The Karen fleet changed direction and struck a city close to the capital. The sky burned with fire. Thousands were trapped, and the council froze again, too slow to respond. Elira didn't wait. She took her force and flew straight into battle. The city was chaos. Buildings fell. Fires raged. Karen walkers moved through the streets. People screamed, ran, or hid in fear. Elira's ships entered low and fast. Her warriors jumped into battle, striking quickly. Using smoke, speed, and Jack's plans, they cut through the enemy line. She found the lead Karen officer herself, tall, armored in black with glowing red eyes. They clashed in the ruined streets. The Karen struck hard. Elira rolled, ducked, and struck back. The fight was brutal, but she moved with purpose and fire. She didn't win with strength. She won with strategy. And when the Karen fell, their army broke. By morning, the city was safe, and across the empire the people cheered not for Rezek, not for the council, but for Elira, the warrior they once called weak. The council had no choice. They gathered once again, this time to make a new offer. "You have saved our people," the High Elder said. "You have led with courage, heart, and skill. We offer you the title of High Commander." Elira bowed her head, but her eyes were firm. "I accept," she said. "But only if we stop ruling through fear. We fight not to conquer, but to protect." Jack stood behind her, proud and silent. And so the girl once mocked and ignored, now stood at the head of an empire. The grand hall of Sathar Prime was filled with voices. Not the usual whispers of politics or court gossip. These were voices of praise, unity, and respect. Banners of many clans hung from the walls. And at the center, wearing battle-worn armor and a calm expression, stood Elira. She had been given the title of High Commander, but the people had already begun to call her something greater, the Warrior Queen. Jack stood beside her. He wasn't dressed in the uniform of a commander, but his presence alone was enough. Everyone in the hall knew who had believed in Elira first, but the war was not over. Though the Karen had been pushed back, they were regrouping. Their main fleet had not yet arrived. Elira's victories had bought time, but not peace. In a meeting with her top warriors, Elira laid out the next plan. "The Karen base is here," she pointed to a star map. "We strike before they move again." Her generals exchanged glances. "It's deep inside enemy space," one said. "We'll be outnumbered," said another. Jack stepped forward. "That's why we'll surprise them, just like we've done before." Elira nodded. "We don't wait for danger to come. We bring the fight to them. This time, we end it." The journey to the Karen system was long and quiet. Her fleet was smaller than the enemy's, but faster, smarter, and united. On board the lead ship, Elira sat in silence, sharpening her blade. Not out of fear, but focus. Jack joined her. "You ready for this?" he asked. She smiled softly. "I've never been more ready." He sat down. "You're different now." "I had to become someone stronger." "No," Jack said, shaking his head. "You became yourself. The person you were always meant to be." Those words stayed with her. As the fleet entered enemy space, Elira's ships powered down to avoid detection. They drifted slowly like shadows among stars. Every warrior was prepared, every ship's crew moved in silence. Then the moment came. "Launch!" Elira commanded. The fleet sprang to life. Engines roared, weapons charged, fighters shot through, space like arrows. The Karen fleet, though large, was unprepared. They hadn't expected the Scythari to come this deep, this soon. Panic spread among their ships. Elira's fighters targeted command ships, communication towers, and fuel stations. One by one, the Karen's strength began to break. But the battle wasn't easy. In the middle of the fight, Elira's flagship was hit. Alarms blared. Smoke filled the control room. Sparks flew from broken panels. "We've lost shields," a crew member shouted. "Reroute power," Jack ordered, already moving to help. "Keep us flying." Elira grabbed the radio. "Keep fighting, we're not done yet." Her voice lit a fire across the fleet. Her warriors pushed forward with even more courage. They followed her not out of fear, but because they believed in her. At the heart of the battle, Elira saw the Karen flagship, a giant vessel with thick armor and powerful weapons. That ship controlled their army. If they could take it down, the war would shift completely. "I'm going in," she said. Jack turned to her. "It's suicide." "Then I'll survive it," she replied with a calm fire in her voice. She entered a small assault ship, took the controls, and launched. The skies were filled with fire, debris, and moving ships. But Elira flew through it like lightning. Dodging beams, weaving between wreckage, she pushed toward the Karen command ship. She landed on its surface, cut through its armor with plasma charges, and entered the ship alone. Inside, it was dark and cold. The halls were filled with guards, but they weren't ready for her. She moved fast, silent, striking only when needed. Her blades sang through the air. Finally, she reached the command center. The Karen commander stood tall, his armor black. As night, his helmet shaped like a skull. He turned slowly, surprised to see her. "You?" he said in a deep voice. "Yes," Elira answered. "Me." He charged. Their fight was brutal. He was larger, stronger, and filled with rage. But Elira was faster, calmer, and smarter. She remembered Jack's lessons: timing, patience, balance. After many blows, she found her chance. With a final twist and strike, she drove her blade into his core. He fell. The ship shook as explosions rocked the walls. Elira rushed back to her, fighter, and flew out just as the command ship began to collapse. From space, her fleet watched the explosion. Cheers filled every channel. "She did it," someone shouted. "The command ship is down. The Karen are retreating." Victory. Elira returned to her fleet. Her ship was damaged, but she was alive. As she stepped onto the landing bay, her warriors bowed. Not because of her title, but because of her courage. Jack met her at the edge of the platform. "You actually did it," he said with a smile. "I told you I'd survive," she replied. He laughed. "Remind me never to doubt you again." The Karen threat was broken. Peace began to return to Scyther space. Colonies rebuilt. Families returned. And Elira, the girl once called useless, became a legend. The council offered her the throne. "You will not just be a warrior," the High Elder said. "You will lead all of Scythar." Elira looked at the stars beyond the window. She thought about her journey, the training, the pain, the doubt, and the human who never gave up on her. "I accept," she said, "but only if we lead with purpose, with heart, with honor." And so she became the warrior queen of Scythar, a leader not born of power but shaped by struggle, faith, and strength of spirit. That night, under a quiet sky, she stood with Jack outside the palace. "You helped me find my strength," she said. Jack shook his head. "You had it all along. I just helped you see it." They looked at the stars together, no longer as student and teacher, but as two warriors who had changed the fate of a galaxy. And the stars, silent and eternal, watched over the rise of a queen.